Let's be real for a moment. He's not going to tell you this. He's not going to text you at 2 a.m. saying, "Hey, I'm falling apart without you." Because that would make him feel weak, vulnerable, exposed, and God knows he's been trained his whole life to never show that. But here's the truth. No one's telling you. Every day without you is slowly destroying him. He's not okay. Not because he's incapable of being alone, but because when he had you, he became someone he liked more. Someone who smiled more, believed more, hoped more. Now, he's watching that version of himself fade in the mirror. He goes to the same places, listens to the same songs, maybe even scrolls past your name in his phone, but he doesn't call. Why? Because pride has its claws in his chest. And hurt has built a fortress around his heart. One he's afraid to break down in case you're not on the other side anymore. You think he doesn't care. He does. But for him, silence feels safer than rejection. And regret has become his daily breakfast. He tells his friends, "I'm good." He posts those stories like life is amazing. But behind all of it is a man who lies awake, wondering, did she know how much she meant? Does she know that with her gone, everything feels grey? Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this to make you run back. This isn't about guilt, this is about truth. Because sometimes we think we were the only ones who broke. But the reality is, the people who seem the strongest, bleed the most quietly. And he's bleeding. So if there's still love in you, if there's a part of you wondering, did he really care? Let me tell you, he did, he does. But every day you're gone, it's taking something from him that he may never fully get back. Because he didn't just lose you, he lost the home he found in you. Men often suffer silently. It's one of the most misunderstood truths about masculinity. From a young age, boys are taught a subtle but powerful lesson. Emotions are weakness. Crying is unmanly. Expressing fear, sadness, or even deep longing is something you're supposed to tuck away, fold into a corner of your chest, and keep moving forward. And so, over time, men learn to silence the parts of themselves that hurt. They don't stop feeling, they just stop showing it. When a man is going through heartbreak, stress, loss, or inner chaos, he usually doesn't know how to say it. He might not even know what he's feeling, only that there's a heavy weight sitting on his chest, and no one around to tell. He could be sitting right across from you, laughing, working, joking, even flirting, and inside, he's fighting a war he doesn't have the words for. That's the reality for so many men. There's no script for vulnerability, no safe outlet, no invitation to break down without breaking his image. This silent suffering doesn't just appear after trauma or heartbreak, it's been cultivated for years. Think about the boy who falls off his bike and hears, "Come on, you're fine, toughen up." The teenager who's heartbroken for the first time and gets told, "Don't cry over a girl, just move on." The man who's overwhelmed and burnt out, but whose only acceptable response is, "I'll figure it out. I've got this." It's always this undercurrent of deal with it alone. So he does. And he becomes very good at pretending he's okay when he's not. The scary part is how invisible it all becomes. A woman might cry, call her friends, write in her journal, go to therapy. She's hurting, yes, but she's processing. She's moving through the pain. A man, he often just tightens his jaw, goes to the gym, pours himself into work, or disappears into distractions. Not because he's heartless, but because he doesn't know what else to do. Pain becomes something he pushes down, and when pain has nowhere to go, it turns into numbness, bitterness, or worst of all, a quiet form of self-destruction. He won't tell you this, but sometimes he'll wake up and feel empty. He'll scroll through his phone and not know who to talk to. He'll think of that one person he wanted to open up to, maybe you, and tell himself, what's the point? She's probably better off. And so the silence continues, and the world keeps clapping for his strength, when underneath it, he's cracking. It's not that men don't feel deeply, it's that they feel so deeply, it terrifies them. That depth of emotion, when unreleased, becomes a storm, and storms that are ignored only grow more violent. That's why so many men crumble in isolation. They become emotionally exhausted, burnt out, disconnected from who they are, all while appearing perfectly fine on the outside. He's working late, he's cracking jokes, he's dating again, but inside, he's still bleeding from wounds no one ever asked about. People think silence means indifference. It doesn't. Sometimes silence is a scream that no one is hearing, a cry that's too risky to speak out loud, especially when the world has told him, over and over, that speaking equals weakness, that he has to man up, when all he really wants is someone to say, "You don't have to do this alone." The truth is, men crave connection, tenderness, and emotional safety just as much as anyone else. They just don't always know how to ask for it. They want to be held, understood, seen, but they're terrified of seeming needy or soft. So instead of reaching out, they retreat. Instead of explaining the storm, they just wait for it to pass, alone. And maybe that's why so many women get confused. They say, "He doesn't seem to care," when the reality is he's caring too much and has no idea what to do with it. He cares, but he's been taught not to show it. He's hurting, but he's been trained to hide it. He's breaking, but no one's ever given him permission to say it out loud. So he suffers, silently, quietly, daily. He's not reaching out, but he's hurting. And that's the part people often misunderstand. When someone doesn't call, doesn't text, doesn't chase after you when things fall apart, it's easy to assume they've moved on, that they've closed the chapter, turned the page, maybe even forgotten. But sometimes silence is not closure, it's chaos, it's confusion, it's a storm of feelings he doesn't know how to navigate, much less express. He's not reaching out not because he feels nothing, but because he feels too much and has no idea what to do with it. There's a version of him that picks up his phone, types out a message to you, and then deletes it. Not because the words aren't true, but because the fear is louder than the longing. Fear of rejection, fear that he'll seem weak, fear that reaching out will somehow reopen a wound that never really closed. He tells himself, "She doesn't want to hear from me, or she's probably better off." And so he lets the silence stretch longer, even though it eats at him. Even though every day, a small part of him aches to hear your name again, see your face again, feel what he used to feel when you were around. The world doesn't give men a playbook for emotional honesty. It gives them one for silence, for retreat, for keeping it together at all costs. He's not supposed to break down. He's not supposed to admit he misses you, especially if he's the one who messed up or walked away. And so he convinces himself that silence is strength, even when it's actually slowly destroying him. People might look at him and think he's cold or careless, but they don't see the moments when he stares blankly at a wall, music playing in the background, your memory playing even louder. They don't see the nights he drinks a little too much, just to stop feeling for a while. They don't see the photos he still has but pretends he deleted. He might go out, he might laugh with friends, post stories, even flirt with someone new, but that doesn't mean he's over it. That doesn't mean he's fine. Sometimes those things are just armor, distractions, ways to feel something other than the hollowness that sits in his chest when he remembers the last time you looked at him like he mattered. He misses that, not just you, but the way he felt with you. Safe, seen, understood. And now that it's gone, he's trying to fill a void he doesn't even want to admit exists. People think when men hurt, they lash out. Sometimes they do, but more often they shut down, they go quiet. They disappear into routines, bury themselves in work or distractions, hoping that maybe eventually the pain will just dissolve, but it doesn't, it lingers. It shows up in quiet ways, like the songs he skips because they remind him of you, or the way he avoids certain places because your memory still haunts them. It shows up when he's alone, when no one's watching, and he lets the mask drop for just a moment. He misses you. He just doesn't know how to say it. He tells himself 1,000 stories to justify the silence. Maybe he thinks you're happier now. Maybe he thinks he doesn't deserve another chance. Maybe his pride won't let him reach out, because to him reaching out means surrender. But inside, he's fighting a battle between the part of him that wants to fix things and the part that's afraid he already lost the chance. It's not indifference, it's paralysis. Emotional lockdown, the kind that doesn't make headlines but quietly eats away at him day after day. And maybe he wishes things were different. Maybe he replays the last conversation in his mind, wondering if he could have said something better. Maybe he remembers your laugh and realizes too late how rare it was to feel that understood. But by then the silence has become a wall. And every day he doesn't speak, it gets harder to break it down. He's hurting, but he's also human, flawed, afraid, unsure of what to do with all the weight he's carrying. So he says nothing, does nothing, and hopes silently that somehow you still feel what he's too scared to say. You mattered more than you know. That's the part you'll probably never fully see, because when things ended, it might have looked like he walked away too easily. Maybe he stopped calling. Maybe he didn't fight for you. Maybe he even said things that made you question if he ever really cared at all. But behind all that, behind the silence and the pride and the mask he put on so well, was someone who was quietly shaken, because your presence in his life meant more than he ever let on, more than he was able to show, or even admit to himself at the time. You didn't just pass through his life, you left fingerprints on parts of him no one else ever touched. He noticed the little things. The way you smiled when you were proud of him, the way you challenged him without trying to change him, the way your energy shifted a room just by walking into it. He won't say this out loud, but you inspired him. You made him think about his future in a way he hadn't before. With you, he started seeing himself not just as who he was, but who he could be. You brought out a softness in him that he'd buried, a sense of possibility he hadn't felt in years. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just surviving the days, he was looking forward to them. But sometimes when something feels that rare, that vulnerable, it terrifies people, especially someone who's used to keeping a tight grip on their emotions. He may have pulled away not because you meant too little, but because you meant too much. Because with you he could feel the stakes rising. He started to feel like he had something to lose. And when you've been let down, abandoned or misunderstood before, that kind of emotional exposure can feel dangerous. So instead of leaning in, he started to armor up. He created distance. He told himself stories that made it easier to cope. Maybe he blamed timing. Maybe he told himself you deserved better. Maybe he convinced himself that this kind of connection was bound to slip away anyway. But even now, after everything, there are moments when your name flickers in his thoughts and his chest tightens. He'll hear a joke and think, she would have laughed at that. He'll pass by a place you once visited together and feel a wave of something he can't quite name, something that feels like longing, regret, gratitude and sadness all mixed into one. Because while life has gone on and he's doing what he needs to do to move forward, the imprint you left hasn't faded. It's not as loud as it once was, but it's there, quiet, constant, undeniable. There are people we meet who teach us lessons, people who challenge us, people who come and go, and then there are the ones who change the temperature of the room, who shift the rhythm of our lives just by being in it. You were that. You were the person who reminded him that emotional connection doesn't have to be complicated. It can be real, honest, even a little messy, but still beautiful. You gave him a space where he didn't have to perform, and even if he didn't always know how to receive it, that gift wasn't lost on him. You mattered more than you know in the way your words stuck with him, echoing at the most unexpected moments. In the way he started to expect more from his own life because he saw the way you carried you. In the way he now holds other people to a higher standard, not because he's bitter, but because he knows what genuine connection can feel like. And he won't settle for less than what he had with you. And that realization didn't hit him all at once. It came slowly, in the quiet moments, in the solitude, in the stillness. After the distractions wore off, he might never say these things. He might keep playing the role of someone who's fine, who's moved on, who's focused on himself and doing great. And in many ways he probably is doing better. But that doesn't erase the impact you had. You mattered to him deeply, so deeply that it shook him out of autopilot and into something that felt real. And just because he didn't fight for it in the way you hoped, doesn't mean it wasn't real for him. It just means he didn't know how to handle something that honest, that vulnerable, that close to his heart. And now that you're not there, he's left with that truth. Quietly, constantly, undeniably, he's losing pieces of himself. And not in the dramatic falling to the floor kind of way most people imagine when they think of heartbreak. It's quieter than that. It's subtle. It's a slow unraveling that happens in the spaces between moments. In the way he looks at himself in the mirror and feels a little less like the man he used to be. It's in the energy he no longer brings to the things that once lit him up. In the pause before a laugh, the hesitation before a smile, the way his posture slightly slumps when he thinks no one's watching. These aren't things he would ever say out loud, but they're there, and if you know him well enough you can see it. He doesn't necessarily associate the feeling with you, not at first. He might even tell himself he's just tired or stressed or going through a rough patch. But underneath that is something deeper, something more personal. Because when he had you in his life, there was a version of himself that felt alive. He was more expressive, more curious, more hopeful. He had someone who saw through the layers he usually kept hidden. And in being seen that way, he allowed himself to show up more honestly in the world. That version of him, the one that came alive around you, is slowly slipping away, and he feels it, even if he can't quite name it. It starts with the little things. Maybe he stops listening to the music you introduced him to, not because he doesn't like it anymore, but because it stings too much. Maybe he avoids the places you used to go together. Maybe he tells mutual friends that he's been too busy to hang out. He starts choosing isolation without even realizing it. Not because he doesn't want connection, but because every connection reminds him of a connection he lost. And it's not just about losing a relationship. It's about losing the part of himself that only existed in that relationship. The part that bloomed when you were near. He might still smile, still function, still do everything he's supposed to do. But something has changed. The spark is dimmer. The drive he once had for certain things now feels like a routine he's forcing himself through. He wakes up in the morning, and instead of feeling inspired or focused, he feels heavy, like there's a weight on his chest he can't quite explain. And instead of addressing it, he carries it. He tells himself it's normal, that it'll pass. But day by day, the emotional load gets heavier. Because losing you wasn't just about losing love, it was about losing the sense of purpose and emotional grounding that came with being loved by you. He might start questioning himself in ways he never did before, wondering if he was enough, if he showed up the right way, if he missed his shot at something real. And even if he's not the type to dwell on the past, it follows him. In the quiet moments, in the in-between. You see, the loss doesn't hit all at once. It shows up gradually, in the form of self-doubt, in restlessness, in irritability, in those nights when he can't fall asleep, because his mind won't stop replaying the past in loops. He thinks about the things he said, the things he didn't, the moments he rushed past, the ones he didn't appreciate enough. And slowly, without realizing it, the foundation of who he thought he was begins to crack. He tries to fill the gap with other things. Work, gym, distractions, people. But nothing quite fits. Nothing replaces what he felt when he was with you. Not just the love, but the sense of being truly seen. And when someone has been seen, and then that mirror disappears, it's jarring. It's like trying to remember who you are without the reflection you once relied on. And that's where the unraveling begins. Not loudly, but gradually. In silence, in solitude. In those invisible moments where he realizes he doesn't quite recognize himself anymore. He becomes more guarded, more cautious, less willing to open up. Not because he doesn't want to connect, but because the cost of connection now feels higher. Vulnerability feels more dangerous. So he builds emotional walls, not just with you, but with the world. And every brick he lays distances him further from the man he used to be when he was with you. The one who laughed freely, loved openly, and believed in the possibility of forever. Now that man feels like a memory. And the more time passes, the more he fears he may never fully find his way back to that version of himself again. He won't tell you this, but I will. He won't say how many times he's replayed the last thing you said to him, how your voice still echoes in his mind like a song he can't stop humming. He won't admit how many nights he's laid awake, wondering what he could have done differently, how he could have loved you better, how he could have fought harder. He carries those questions quietly, tucked behind the casual, "I'm good," and the forced smile. You won't see it on his face because he's learned to hide it. Life taught him early on that vulnerability isn't safe, that if he lets someone see how deeply he feels, they might use it against him or walk away. So now, instead of confessing what's really going on in his heart, he stays silent. But I'll say it for him, because someone needs to. He still thinks about you, more often than you'd ever guess. He wonders how you're doing, if you still smile at the same things, if you've met someone who sees what he saw in you. He won't ask, because asking would mean admitting he still cares. And that's a door he doesn't know how to open without falling apart. But trust me, if he could just send one message without pride getting in the way, it would probably say, "I miss you, but I don't know how to say it without sounding weak." That's the part that eats at him, the fear that you might think he didn't care, that you might believe his silence means indifference, when really it means confusion and pain. He won't tell you how you changed him, how your presence made him feel seen in a way that was rare, maybe even unfamiliar. With you he didn't have to wear the usual mask. He didn't have to perform or prove anything. He could just be, and you still chose him. That kind of acceptance is powerful and terrifying. It's why he pulled away at times. It's why he might have sabotaged something that felt too good. Because when you're not used to being loved that way, part of you doubts it's even real. He questioned himself constantly, wondered if he was enough, wondered when it would all fall apart. And then when things did fall apart, he blamed himself more than you'll ever know. He still keeps the memories, not just the big ones, but the tiny ordinary moments, the way you laughed when you were tired, the softness in your eyes, when you looked at him without saying a word, the scent you left on his hoodie that he didn't wash for weeks, because it still smelled like you. Those moments are tucked away, not because he can't move on, but because those pieces of the past are all he has left to feel close to you. He won't post about it. He won't text you at 2 a.m., but he carries you, quietly, constantly. And sometimes carrying you is what makes it so hard for him to carry himself. He wants to reach out. So many times, he's hovered over your name, thumb paused, heart racing. But he doesn't. Not because he doesn't care, but because he's convinced that if you wanted to hear from him, you would have reached out first. There's a standoff happening in the silence, one where both sides are hurting but too afraid to break the pride-fueled stillness. And every day that passes without a word makes it harder for him to believe he even has a place in your life anymore. So he stays quiet, he distracts himself, he plays strong, but it's a performance he's exhausted from repeating. He won't tell you that he checks in on you from afar, that he still knows your birthday, still notices when your posts feel a little heavier, still smiles when someone mentions something that reminds him of you. He won't say it, but I will. You mattered to him more than he was able to express. And losing you wasn't just about losing a person. It was about losing a feeling, a version of himself that only existed when you were around. That loss lingers. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up in the quietest moments. When he's brushing his teeth, driving alone, standing in line with too much on his mind. That's when the memories sneak in. That's when the ache returns. He won't say these things out loud, because the world has taught him that men are supposed to move on quickly, keep it cool, act unaffected. But he's not unaffected. He's just unreadable. He's not emotionless. He's just scared. Scared of being vulnerable again. Scared of getting it wrong again. Scared of letting you know that even after everything, his heart still hasn't fully let you go. So, no, he won't tell you, but I will. So here's the truth. He won't say it, but he's breaking inside. Every day without you chips away at him, in ways he never expected. He's not as fine as he looks. He's quieter now, slower, more guarded. He distracts himself, puts on a strong face, maybe even convinces others he's over it. But beneath it all, he still carries the weight of what you were and what you meant. You mattered more than you'll ever know, and your absence isn't just a space in his life, it's a silence in his soul. He's losing pieces of himself not because you left, but because he never learned how to hold on to something real, without letting fear drive it away. And even now, when pride and silence keep him from reaching out, the longing hasn't faded, it's just buried deeper. If he could say one thing, it would be this: I didn't know how to keep you, but I never stopped feeling you. Sometimes, the people who seem the most silent are the ones screaming the loudest on the inside. He may never tell you these things, but that doesn't make them any less true, and you deserve to know. He's not over it, not even close.